Okay, we're going to continue our study of factoring by learning about factoring by grouping. So the previous method of factoring really only works when you have a polynomial that starts with x squared. But what if you have a polynomial that starts with 2x squared, or basically a leading coefficient that is greater than 1? How would you handle that? So to illustrate this method, I'm going to show you that factoring is literally just multiplication in reverse. So let's do some multiplication. Let's do 2x, 2x minus 3. And we're going to multiply that by x plus 4. Now, the reason I've written this property up here is because this property is the property we derived a couple of lessons ago when we learned how to multiply polynomials. So using this property basically states that if you have a binomial a plus b and you're multiplying it by c plus d, what you're really doing is just distributing the terms from the first polynomial to the terms in the second. So that would be equal to a times c plus b times c plus d. And usually all we do is kind of like multiply it out and write it out. But in this example, I'm actually going to show you, I'm going to write out this step. I'm sorry, that's not a. That's going to be 2x multiplied by x plus 4 and negative 3 times x plus 4. And now we can go ahead and distribute. We can do 2x squared, and that would give us 8x. And distributing the negative 3 would give us negative 3x and negative 12. And combining like terms, this gives us 2x squared plus 5x minus 12. So that's multiplication. Now, if factoring is just multiplication in reverse, then we should be able to reverse this process. So let's say we started out with 2x squared plus 5x minus 12. Our next step would be to write it out as 2x squared plus 8x minus 3x minus 12. The problem is, how do we know how to split up this middle term, 5x? Just like our other method, there are an infinite number of ways of splitting up this middle term. Now, I'm going to show you how to split it up, but we really don't have time this week to go into why this works. You're just going to have to trust me. I never like teaching this way, and if any of you are really, really curious, I'll make another video explaining why this works, but just trust me for now. To decide how to split up 5x, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our leading coefficient, our 2, and our constant, negative 12, and we're going to just multiply them together. And 2 times negative 12 is negative 24. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for two factors of negative 24 that add up to 5. All right, so the factors of 24 are 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, and 4 and 6. Now, because we have a negative 24 here, each one of these factors could be negative. This could be negative 1 times 24 or negative 24 times 1. Either way, that's not going to add up to 5. So in order to add up to 5, it looks like we're going to have a negative 3 here and a positive 8. So I'm going to split this 5x up into two terms, a positive 8x and a negative 3x. And now what I can do is I can factor by grouping my terms together. So I'm going to take the first two terms, this 2x squared and this 8x, and these second two terms, this negative 3x and negative 12, and I'm going to factor it just like I would any other expression. So 2 and 8 share a factor of 2, x squared and x share a factor of 2x, so I'm going to factor out a 2x, leaving me with x plus 4. Now I'm going to take a look at this expression separately. I've got a negative 3 and a negative 12. They both share a factor of negative 3, so I'm going to factor out a negative 3, and that's going to give me negative 3 times x plus 4. Now if you notice, at this point, what we have is 2x times x plus 4 and negative 3 times x plus 4. Looks a lot like this expression right here, all right, which we know is equivalent to the binomials a plus b times c plus d, or a and b both multiplied by c plus d, or what's in the parentheses. So an equivalent way of writing this expression would be 2x minus 3, all right, both multiplied by x plus 4. And if you notice, here's the multiplication. Here's this process. That's the multiplication. All right, and this factorization is literally these statements backwards. And the only part of the process that you really need to think about is how you're going to split up this 5x, this middle term. And I told you all you have to do is multiply the leading coefficient and the constant and see which factors add up to this middle term, and that's how you split it up. And the factorizations should work out perfectly. So let's go through some examples. Here's our next example. Let's do 3x squared plus 7x plus 2. All right, so try that one on your own, and we'll see how you do. Pause the video now. All right, let's see how you do, or let's see how you did. So I don't know how to split up my 7x, so I'm going to multiply my 3 by my 2, and that gives us 6. So it should be pretty obvious what what's going to happen here. The factors of 6 are 1 and 6, and 2 and 3. And the only two factors that add up to 7 are 1 and 6. So I'm going to split this up into 3x squared plus 1x, or just x. And then I'm going to split up the 7x into 6x and 2. And I'm going to take these first two terms, and I'm going to factor them, and I'm going to take these second two terms. Now the greatest common factor here is just x. They don't share a 3, they just share an x. So I'm going to factor out an x here, and I'm going to leave the 3x and the 1. Here, 6x and 2 both share a 2. All right, and that'll leave us with 3x and 1. And notice, we are left with the same expression in the parentheses. So x and 2, both multiplied by 3x plus 1, can be rewritten as x and 2, both multiplied by 3x and 1. And of course, if you're unsure whether or not you did this correctly, you can always multiply this out to see if you get the original expression. X times 3x is 3x squared, x times 1 is 1x, plus 2 times 3 is 6x, that'll give you your 7x, and then 2 times 1 is 2. All right, let's try another example. Let's do 8x squared plus 34x, 34x minus 30. All right, let's pause the video and see how you do. Pause the video now. All right, so I'm sure the first thing you did was you took this 8 and you multiplied it by negative 30 and realized that's a big number that you don't want to factor. At which point you should have said, I probably should look for a greatest common factor first, because we just went through a whole set of lessons where taking out the greatest common factor was the first thing we did. So let's take out a greatest common factor. All right, so the greatest common factor here is 2. Taking out that 2 gives us a 4x squared plus 17x minus 15. So now what we want to do is we want to focus on the trinomial in the parentheses, and that's what we want to factor. All right, because now that we've taken out that greatest common factor, all of our numbers are smaller. All right, so we're going to take this greatest common factor, and we're going to remember that it's out here. Okay, so we got to multiply everything by 2, and then we're going to just concentrate on factoring this trinomial. All right, so the 4 and the negative 15 multiply to negative 60. All right, and factoring out our negative 60, we get 1 and 60. 2 and 30, and then 3 and 20. And although there are more factors, all right, what we're trying to look for are two factors that sum up to the coefficient of the middle term, the coefficient of x. And since 60 is negative, one of these factors has to be negative, and 20 and negative 3, all right, have a sum of positive 17. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this 17x up into negative 3x and 20x. Now, at this point, because addition is commutative, it might be a little strategic to make it easier on yourself. You should be a little strategic on how you order your terms. I could group the negative 3x with the 4x, but I'm going to group the 20x. I'm sorry, with the 4x squared. I'm going to group the 20x with the 4x and the negative 3x with the negative 15x, only because it's going to be a lot easier. 4 and 20 both share a common factor of 4, negative 3, negative 15, a common factor of negative 3. So here we go. We're going to factor out each expression separately. Here, the common factor is 4x, leaving us with x plus 5. And the common factor here is negative 3, leaving us with x plus 5. And now 4x and negative 3, both multiplied by x and 5, can be rewritten as 4x and negative 3, both multiplied by x plus 5. Now don't forget, all right, we are factoring this trinomial, and this trinomial is not our original trinomial. This is half of our original trinomial because we factored out that 2. So don't forget about that 2. So our complete answer would be 2 times 4x minus 3 times x plus 5. And you can check this by doing the multiplication. If you just multiply these two binomials, all you'll get is 4x squared plus 17x minus 15, which isn't x squared plus 34x minus 30. All right, so you have to multiply all that by 2, and this is the right way to write it. So this trinomial doesn't have 2 factors, it has 3 factors. All right, we're going to try one more example, and then I'll leave you to work on your own. Let's try negative 6x squared plus 3x plus 30. And hopefully you've learned your lesson about what to do first. So go ahead and pause the video and try this one on your own. Pause the video now. Okay. All right, so who multiplied negative 6 by 30? Incorrect. All right, let's take out that greatest common factor. And the greatest common factor here is 3, but because that leading coefficient is negative, we're going to take out a negative 3. All right, so that's going to leave us with 2x squared minus x minus 10. All right, and now we're just going to kind of remember about, remember that we have a factor of negative 3, and we're just going to factor this trinomial inside the parentheses. Now 2 times negative 10 is negative 20. All right, now the factors of 20 are 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. And there we go. Now, because 20 is negative, one of these factors has to be negative and has to have a sum of negative 1. All right, so that's going to be negative 5 and positive 4 have a sum of negative 1. And again, I'm going to be strategic about how I place these terms. I'm going to group my 4x with my 2x squared. And that'll give me n 4x. All right, and then I'm going to group my negative 5x with my negative 10, because it's just going to be easier to factor that way. And there we go. All right, so the greatest common factor here is 2x. All right, and the greatest common factor here is negative 5. And what we end up with is 2x and negative 5, both multiplied by x plus 2. So that's going to be 2x and negative 5, both multiplied by x plus 2. And of course, don't forget, these are only 2 of the factors of this trinomial. The third one is negative 3. So our final answer, or our complete factorization, would be negative 3 times 2x minus 5 times x plus 2. And there we go.